how fast time flies by. So we have been talking about the life of Joseph. I'm going to try to jump right in and not ramble forever. We are in Genesis chapter 41. Yeah, Peter gets to hear me ramble. We're in Genesis chapter 41, and we left Joseph off in prison. He had interpreted some dreams, and they had come true, but the butler who was supposed to help Joseph out kind of forgot all about him. So from last week to this week, we now fast forward 2 years. Okay, so that was a fast 2 years. So 2 years have gone by, and the Pharaoh, do you remember who a Pharaoh is, or who the Pharaoh was? He is like the king of Egypt, okay, except they use the word Pharaoh. He is the head of Egypt. Well, he's sleeping. Sounds good right about now, right, boys and girls? Woke up a little too early this morning. He's sleeping, and man, I can hear Peter snoring over here. Man, he's got some dreams, and he sits up, and he's like, that was a weird dream, like really weird dream. They're like, well, it's the middle of the night. I gotta go back to bed. It's not time to get up yet. And he lays back down, and he's like, wait a minute. The second dream is about as crazy as the first dream. Like, he is so confused. And so he gathers all these people around him. He gathers all the wise men that he knows, all the people who are smart. And he's like, I had these dreams, and I don't know what's up with these dreams. And he's telling the wise people about the dreams, and they're like, we don't know. They have no answers for him. And the butler's there going, hey, wait a minute. I met this guy once. I know this guy. And he can interpret dreams. 2 years later, the butler fulfills his promise and tells the Pharaoh about Joseph. He's like, I had this dream. And he tells all about the dream that he had. Do you boys and girls remember what dream he had that we talked about last week? Do you remember, Peter? Should we remind the boys and girls what the dream was? Yeah, the butler had dreamed about a vine with 3 clusters of grapes, which represented 3 days, and he was holding Pharaoh's cup. He squeezed the grapes in, and it meant that in 3 days on Pharaoh's birthday, he was going to be restored to his job, and that really happened. And we talked about the baker and how his dream meant that 3 days later he would die. Well, the butler tells all this to the Pharaoh. He says, you know how you threw me in prison and restored me? Well, this guy told me about it. You know how you killed the baker? This guy told us about the dream. And he says, you've got to meet this guy. Like, this guy is so awesome. And Pharaoh's kind of probably thinking, like, why didn't you tell me about him before? But why is he still in prison? Well, he sends for Joseph. Now, boys and girls, Joseph's been in prison over 2 years. He hasn't gotten to take a bath or a shower like you and I do. And he's a grown man. He's got quite the facial hair going on. It's looking a little scraggly. He hasn't been able to maintain it, so it doesn't look nice and neat. And kind of the same thing with the haircut. It's kind of crazy. And so Joseph comes out of the prison, and they help him get washed up. They give him clean clothes. He gets all cleaned up, looking nice to meet the Pharaoh. And he goes and he meets the Pharaoh. And the Pharaoh goes, I heard that you can interpret dreams. And Joseph goes, well, I can't, but God can. I can pray, I can talk to God, and God can tell you what your dream means. So Pharaoh's like, okay, well, however you got to do it, just tell me what my dream means. Because Pharaoh is so confused. It's like he's walking around in a fog because he doesn't know what these dreams mean. Well, his first dream, as he starts to tell Joseph about his dream, he goes, out of the river came 7 fat cows, plump, good to eat, nice looking cows came out of the river. And he's like, it was great. He goes, but then out of the river comes 7 really skinny, malnourished, teeny looking cows. He's like, they didn't look healthy at all. They looked very unhealthy. And he goes, and then the 7 unhealthy cows ate the healthy cows. The skinny ones ate the fat ones. Only Peter's snorting over here like a pig. Only they didn't get any bigger. Like, after you eat Thanksgiving dinner and you kind of feel it in your stomach and it feels like you feel bigger. Yeah, these cows didn't look any bigger. They ate full-size cows and they didn't look any bigger. And so he goes, well, I fell asleep and then I woke back, or I had another dream. And on this next dream, there was a stalk that corn grows on. And on that stalk were 7 big, luscious ears of corn. I don't know about you boys and girls, but I like it when my mom serves the corn and we have little yellow corn-looking dishes. And then we salt and butter it and you kind of just roll it in there. Oh, corn, so yummy. Corn on the cob, minus the little stuff you get in your teeth. But the corn on the cob, oh, that corn, it looked so luscious. It looked so good. It looked so yummy. It looked good. Well, then another corn stalk grew up, and on that corn was 7 real skinny, shriveled up looking corn on the cob that you wouldn't want to eat. You're like, oh, we'd leave that behind. Nobody'd buy that at the store. And that 7 shriveled up ears of corn ate the other ears of corn. Now that's kind of funny to me, boys and girls, that corn ate corn, but it did. And it still looked as shriveled up and worn out. Well, this is very confusing to Pharaoh, and Pharaoh tells the dream to Joseph. What do you think Joseph does after Pharaoh tells him the dream? What do you think he does? That's right, Peter. He prays. He takes time. He prays. He asks God what the meaning of this dream is. And then he goes to tell Pharaoh. Okay, just like in the other dreams, 3 meant 3 days, this time 7 means 7 years. Egypt was going to have 7 years, very good years. Their crops were going to grow. They were going to have an excess of food. Everything was going to go great. They were going to have great harvest, food in abundance. But after the 7 good years, 7 bad years were going to come. They weren't going to have rain. The crops weren't going to grow. It was going to be 7 years of famine. It was going to be a difficult time. Famine is a word, basically, you can kind of think of starving, no food. Okay, they weren't going to have any food to eat. And so it's like, wait a minute, what? 7 years of our crops not growing? 7 years without getting good food? And so Joseph relays this, and Pharaoh's kind of sitting there thinking, like, what are we going to do? And God gives Joseph the wisdom to say, Pharaoh, you need to have somebody who's going to be in command, who for those 7 good years will collect food and store it up in the storehouses like a giant barn, okay, who will store up the food. He said, you're going to need the people to give 1/5 of all that they grow in the 7 good years and store it up so we have it in the 7 bad years. And so Joseph begins to tell Pharaoh that this is the plan that God would like him to use. This is what he'd like him to do. And Pharaoh's like, where am I going to find somebody like that? You want to be it, Peter? You want to collect all the food? Probably if it's bamboo, right? Yeah, no starving for Peter here. And Pharaoh's like, who can I hire? And who do you think? That's right, Joseph, who's standing right in front of him. He says, well, you can do it. You can be the second in command. He makes him second in command. The only person he answers to is Pharaoh. Pharaoh is the only one in charge. So Joseph, for those 7 years, is going to be in charge of collecting the food. And the people were good about bringing 1/5 of the food to him so he could store it up. So again, Joseph went from the bottom. He went from in prison, only now he's out of prison. He's no longer a slave. He is in charge. And Pharaoh also, as a reward or a prize, kind of seems a little odd to us, he said that Joseph could marry one of his daughters. So he gets out of prison and he gets a wife. That's a good deal. And then he has 2 sons by this wife as well. Well, next, probably not next week because we are coming up on the holiday season, but the next time we talk about Joseph, we're going to talk about what happens in those 7 plus 7 years. Boys and girls, I hope you have a great week and enjoy this spring weather. Bye, boys and girls.